The only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. It's important that people wake up to what is going on. It's time that we read the Constitution. It is error that needs the support of government. Truth can stand alone. That was given to us by Thomas Jefferson. Welcome to The Real Story. We're here in Washington, D.C. at the Ron Paul Revolution March. I'm joined by a bunch of Ron Paul supporters who decided to take time out of their life just so they could what? Stand up for freedom, stand up for liberty, okay? Let people know that the rule of law is important. Let them understand, maybe some of the people out there, like our viewers, will understand that, the Bill of Rights has a reason. There's a reason why these people gave up their lives, gave up their liberty, okay, to fight for our freedoms. Now, we can what? We can either take for granted, or we can turn around and actually fight and defend things like our Constitution. So what we're doing here, we're marching for freedom. This is a Liberty March. This is the Ron Paul Liberty March, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's going to be a wonderful thing. All this for Kennedy's not even in the race, people.
Great to see you here. Keep moving, folks. Keep moving, folks.
Welcome to The Real Story. My name's Daniel Hap Pat. I'm here with the great Mr. G. Edward Griffin. And we came here to Washington, D.C. Well, I got to ask Mr. Griffin, why are you here? What brought you to this wonderful capital of our nation?
Well, Daniel, I came here to talk before the Freedom Rally, the Freedom March rally here, and talk to all of these members of the Constitutional Underground and the supporters of Ron Paul.
Excellent. You know, I was hoping that in with this opportunity with you, we could discuss things like, well, let's say the fiat monetary system we utilize, fractional reserve banking, and maybe even a little bit on the Federal Reserve. Probably maybe warm up before your speech, or I don't know what you're going to speak to the crowd with, but my listeners and my viewers, they probably don't have a good grasp. They all haven't had the opportunity to read The Creature from Jekyll Island. Now, I'm going to try to bring that to them in one form or another, but since I have the author with me, I thought, gee, I could start off with, could you tell our viewers a little bit about this private bank that creates our currency?
Well, time is, of course, very limited, and normally I can talk for days on this topic and then only scratch the surface. All that's by way of an excuse. I'm not going to be able to say anything very succinct, but I think that the most important thing for people to know about the Federal Reserve who have not studied it is that the Federal Reserve is not a government agency. That comes as a big shock for a lot of people.
I know, everybody says federal, so they think right away.
As part of the cover. But it's not a government agency. In fact, what it is, it's a cartel. It's no different than a sugar cartel or a banana cartel or an oil cartel. This happens to be a banking cartel, which means it's an association of the largest banks in the country who come together for the purpose of promoting their own industry. And they want it to look like a government agency. And in fact, they do have some authority and some power, which makes it very easy to believe that it's a government agency, because you see what happened is when they formed and they had the Federal Reserve Act passed in 1913, they went to Congress and they actually, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that they purchased Congress. They purchased congressmen and senators. They gave them very attractive financial reasons to support the Federal Reserve Act. What the act really is nothing but the cartel agreement that the bankers drew up among themselves. They said, how are we going to perpetuate our industry? How are we going to pass our losses on to the taxpayer? How are we going to make sure that nobody has any alternative to using our system and our money? And they said the only way we can do that is to take our agreement and pass it into law. And so the Federal Reserve Act, when you read it, is nothing but a cartel agreement which was passed into law, which means that that people now have to obey the cartel or they go to jail. What a nifty arrangement, you see. Most people don't realize that. I didn't realize it before I started to study.
This is almost like a government-controlled monopoly then, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's not a government-controlled monopoly. It's a privately controlled monopoly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, people, thank you.
It's privately controlled, but it has the appearance of being the government. The only way the government gets into it is they enforce the agreements.
And also they get to utilize the currency when it's first produced, having its greatest purchasing power, right?
Very good, Daniel, very good. The reason that one of the reasons the Congress is willing to do this, because they get cut in on the deal, you see. They have a very good motivation, an incentive, and that is that they can go to the Federal Reserve if they're running out of money and they don't want to raise it from the taxpayers, which they don't want to do because, not in taxes, they get it from the taxpayers through inflation, but they don't want to do it through taxes because that's more obvious. So they go to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve literally just creates the money out of nothing, out of thin air. And then they go through this hocus pocus of lending it to the federal government at interest. Well, they didn't lend it. There was nothing there to lend. They just created it. That's the word that should be kept in mind. They create the money, and then they charge a service fee for creating it, and they call it interest, but it's not really interest. So it's a lot of hidden stuff that the average person doesn't realize and is not going to realize by studying the textbooks or listening to the news, because they keep that pretty well hidden from the people.
The other thing, it's funny when you say hidden and stuff, most of my listeners, they think inflation. It's this gray, cloudy thing that they don't understand that well. And every now and then I'll talk to them and I'll say things like, well, it's not the price of gas going up, it's the purchasing power of your currency going down. And for my listeners, I say, well, gee, if their parents grew up in this little town community of Sharon, and when they grew up in Sharon, what did a house cost 50 years ago? And I ask my listeners, I say, well, did a house have a roof? You know, did it have doors, windows, a heating system, running water, a functioning toilet? And they go, yeah, it had all those things. And I go, does it have all those things today? And the only difference in this, quote, cost of house is the amount of these units we exchange for said house.
Well, that's it exactly. And the amount of money that you have to spend for a house today, that same house, if you didn't spend it on the house, you could go out and buy a huge market basket worth of goods and so forth. That market basket is no bigger today than it was if you took the money back in 1910, let's say, or 20, and instead of buying the house, you went out and bought the same market basket. You'd buy the same things with a smaller amount of money. So you see, the house really isn't worth anything more today than it was then in terms of purchasing power, in terms of other commodities.
Excellent. You know, the other I tried, and I'm not sure the gentleman who told this, but I really like the analogy, and for you viewers and listeners, the analogy goes like this. If in 1963 I had 3 US dimes, which I believe were 90% silver back then, that the purchasing power was enough to get a gallon of gasoline. And so for you motorists and viewers and people that utilize gasoline, if they still had those 3 1963 or before dimes that were 90% silver, they'd have enough value in their hand, okay, real intrinsic value, just based on the commodity silver in this case, to buy a gallon of gasoline.
That's right. So the price of gasoline has not gone up.
If anything, you'd consider it going down because our productivity, we can now research, we can find, refine all that better.
So all this business about, oh, the prices are going up, the prices are going up, and you hear politicians talk about that a lot. They're just doing that to divert attention away from the real cause, which are the politicians themselves and the Federal Reserve System, which are inflating the currency. They don't want you to think about that. They want you to think about those bad oil companies and those bad landlords.
Well, exactly. Keeping the fingers pointed, they look the other way.
That's it.
Now, here we are at a nation's capital, and I think of one of our previous presidents. I think his name was Jefferson, who said something to the effect of, if we ever were to allow a central bank or a private bank to create and control our currency, that our children would wake up as, well, homeless on the lands that their forefathers conquered.
That's it, exactly, yes.
And we're watching that now. We're watching it, I don't know what I see watching, but hey, tell us a little about your book. So maybe, you know, I actually gave your book to a neighbor of mine, an MIT graduate from the 60s, great gentleman, Mr. Bruce Norian. And Bruce, anyway, after reading it, came back to me and just said, wow.
Well, that's really great for me to hear, you know, and I wrote that thing. It's 600 pages, as you know. I finished it. In fact, I really didn't finish the book. I had another box full of notes, a Hope Banker box full of notes. I was going to do some more chapters, and I looked at the 600 pages and, you know, this is too much as it is. I just have to stop it here, because if they don't get the picture by now, they're never going to get it. So, hey, they're singing the Star Spangled Banner. Singing it, she was singing it well. I don't know, we're going to find out though. Yeah. Mr. Griffin, maybe I'll catch you a little bit later. Sure. Okay,
thank you. Stay with health.
So you see, prices really haven't gone up. Gas hasn't gone up. Housing hasn't gone up. Groceries have not gone up. The fact is that the value of the dollar is going down, and that's a result of the Federal Reserve System. That's a result of the scam. And you are the victim, because that means you're losing your purchasing power. Every dollar that you earn, every dollar that you invest, every dollar that you put in some kind of a monetary or dollar-denominated investment, whether it be a savings account or an insurance policy or a retirement fund, anything that's based on dollars, every day that passes, a little bit of that value is chiseled away, chiseled away. It's like going into the casino. You know that when you put that quarter or that dollar into the slot machine, you may win now and then, but overall, a certain percentage of every amount of your bet is taken by the house. A certain percent every time you pull the handle, every time you make an investment or a financial transaction in America today, this giant Federal Reserve casino, they take a little percentage of your money. And the longer you stay in that game, the more they take from you. So that at the point, at the end of your productive lifetime, after, say, 40, 50, 60 years of earning your money, they have taken about 98% of it. And And you don't even know it, or many people don't even know. They think it's inflation. They think the money just went up to heaven someplace. No, it didn't go up to heaven. It went to the federal government and to the banks that are partners in the Federal Reserve System. So that's how you are the victim. They're stealing money from you. Okay, my 10 minutes are about up. Now, I'll end as I began. The Federal Reserve System is the greatest scam in history, and you are the victim. But now, what are we going to do about it? Al? Yes. I'm going to take this whole topic and condense it down even further to just 4 words. Abolish the Federal Reserve.
This is The Real Story. Here we are in Washington, D.C., and with us we have a great man. And I met his son, and I made sure his son realized that his father was a great man. And that was, we have Mr. Joe Bannister. Joe, thank you for coming. Could you tell the people, in this case the viewers of Sharon, which is a community outside of Boston, what brought you here?
Well, from 93 through 99, I was a special agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and was listening to a talk radio show one day, and the guest was talking about the income tax and the fact that there was a tax, that there was a bit of a problem with it and the way it was administered. And so I started to investigate that claim that there was a problem with the income tax, and after about 2 years of part-time research, concluded that she was right and that I couldn't continue in that job any longer, knowing what I knew. So I confronted my supervisors in the IRS. I showed them the evidence that I had accumulated and validated, and they didn't want to hear it. They said they weren't going to answer any of my questions, they weren't going to address any of my concerns, and they invited me to resign. So realizing that I burned a bridge or two, I thought that it might be better to resign while I still had my good reputation intact at the IRS, because typically they will try to smear a good reputation so that no one will believe you. So I basically resigned. I resigned on February 25th, 1999. So it's been nearly 10 years. And you know, my activism really just consists of going to events like this when I'm invited and telling my story. So it's not real complex.
Still, it's pretty wonderful. And the reason I think it's wonderful, I'm going to make certain that my children actually get to see this, because I want them to see what a real man is and what a real man does. It's hard to believe nowadays that, you know, in this audience maybe we have pretty much an aware audience, but as you go outside the realm and you get into the mass media, most people have no concept and won't probably take the time to find out what is constitutional and what is not, and what is right and what is wrong. And many people get used to just cheating a little or just getting, you know, and first of all, I've got to shake your hand, because there are a few times I meet men who can look in the mirror and I know that they're good men, and they know it also.
Nice of you to say, but I think the problem is I didn't think that what I did, speaking up, asking questions, was really that rare or unusual. But unfortunately, after nearly 10 years since I've done it, there haven't been a whole lot, hardly any, that have followed me out the door. So that's what's kind of a shame. Like I say, what I did, I think, is what most people, nearly everyone, should be able to do. Look at the facts, make a judgment, and then act upon it. And it's just sad that that's more rare than I thought.
Now, if I could, your thoughts on Ron Paul, since we're at a Ron Paul rally march.
Well, I'm very enthused about Mr. Paul, Dr. Paul, I should say. I've actually had the opportunity to appear with him in various venues. He's just a great man, and it's wonderful to have a candidate that's reached the level of, you know, a mainstream presidential candidate who thinks like we think. And when I say we, it should be like we the people, not just our agenda or our faction, but Americans who just know what the Constitution says and wants their government to follow it. It's a pretty simple message.
Have you, by any chance, had an opportunity to read G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island?
I did. In fact, that was one of the first books that I read in my enlightenment process. And it was very, very instrumental in painting a big picture for me about how everything worked. And I also discovered at that point that the Income Tax and the Federal Reserve Act came into being at the same time, 1913. Not a coincidence.
Well, and the other thing is, when you find out that it was Nelson Aldrich who brought the bill forth, or brought the legislation forth, and then we remember that banker. His name was, that's right, Nelson Rockefeller. I guess his middle name being Aldrich. Interesting thoughts, but first off, once again, I want to thank you for being out here. I want to thank you, and my viewers, if you would, please find out. Do you have a radio show and stuff?
Yeah.
Maybe they can, learn a little themselves.
My website is freedomabovefortune.com, and my radio show is on WTPRN.com, We the People Radio Network, WTPRN.com. It runs every Saturday from 12 to 2 Central Time, and it's archived within a few hours after each show. So, if people aren't, if they're busy doing other things on a Saturday, they can listen to it any time of the day or night.
Excellent. Is it downloadable as maybe an MP3 or whatever for these people?
Absolutely, yes.
Fantastic. Because I know, a lot of my listeners out there, they probably, like I say, if they're busy at that time, they can always download it and listen to it. What an outstanding thing. I want to thank your son, Ryan, too, who was the man and took good care of us and gave us time and space.
Okay, yeah, right.
For coming to Washington.
I love my family, and that's a big part of my motivation. I've caused my family some heartache because of the stand, but yeah, haven't we all? So I'm just I love my family. I'm happy that they're with me, and they motivate me a great deal.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Good man. Appreciate your time. Yeah. There you go.
It has been said that when in the course of human events, an oppression so revolts its subjects that it becomes necessary to alter or abolish the means of that tyranny. Is it that time when our Bill of Rights is defiled every day? When our adventures abroad threaten our security at home? When the Federal Reserve keeps our free nation enslaved by debt? When the people of the world tremble under the thumb of corporate imperialism? And now, our nation is drifting dangerously from freedom to fascism. So I have to ask, is it time? The time is now. The threat is clear. The bands of tyranny are tightening around America, and it is our duty to resist. As empowered patriots, let us take stock of our commitment to the ideals upon which this country was founded. America without her freedoms is like a body without a soul. The challenge before the freedom movement is no less than to bring about a revolution of values, inspire a renaissance of American politics, and breathe new life into the tortured body of our nation. We will meet that challenge with courage and love, and as always, we the people will prevail. During the siege of Fallujah, a young Lance Corporal was shot through the side of his flak jacket in a firefight to the west of the city. The bullet hit an artery near his spine. My team was called to help get him to the field hospital at Camp Tecum. He was in a stretcher in the Humvee in front of me, and I watched as the corpsman treated the external wounds in a frightened, hurried panic as the dust from the hot road swirled around us. When we got there, I carried him in as he moaned and writhed in pain, barely conscious. He flailed his arm off the stretcher, and I put it back by his side, and I told him, "Don't worry, you made it. You're gonna be okay." But he died only minutes later from the internal bleeding. I have to live with that memory every day, but I have learned from it. I will not tell you that the Band-Aids applied by Democrats and Republicans will heal us. I will not pretend that everything is just going to be okay while we are bled dry by tyrants. And if it takes the last full measure of devotion, I will not allow the same fate to befall this country.
Yeah!
This young movement is getting past the external wounds to the greater evils plaguing this nation. We know that the greatest threat to American security is the current corruption of our government. No politician has ever ended a war. Civil rights were won in this country not by any legislator, but by a movement. I have great hope for America, but it comes not from any election. No, my hope comes from you.
Here we are in Washington, D.C., the future place of our future president, Mr. Chuck Baldwin. You know?
Thank you very much.
The crowd loves you.
Great to be here.
Anyway, I want to, to start off with, for our viewers and stuff, and for the audience, anybody who may see this, why are you here? Why is it important that you're here, and what can they do to help you?
Well, I supported Ron Paul whenever he was running in the primary, and so I'm very much in favor of the message that he presents. And I'm here to lend my voice to that message. I mean, we're going to keep that message of freedom and independence and liberty. We want to keep it going in 2008. And if people like you and me don't do it, I'm afraid that the two major parties as a whole are not going to continue that message. So I'm just here as a Constitution Party presidential candidate to let people know that they do have an alternative. If they're not happy with John McCain and Barack Obama, they want somebody that's going to present the message of truth and liberty. Chuck Baldwin in 2008 is the guy to do it.
That's the way to go. And the other thing that these people should know is not only that, but we're here to, support the Republic, okay? To restore the Republic and to make sure that the people out there, you listeners, understand that the Bill of Rights is important, okay? The Constitution was written to what? To control the people back here, not to control you. Okay, once again, the Constitution, why was it written? If we bother to read it?
Yeah, exactly right. The prohibitions of the Constitution were on the government, not the people. Congress shall make no law respecting and establishment of religion, et cetera, et cetera. It's a document of liberty for the people of this country. Unfortunately, I think what we have among the two parties mostly is a mindset that it's a nation of the government, by the government, for the government, instead of the people, by the people, for the people. It's very important. I really personally believe that we are hanging by a thread. That is our freedoms, our liberties, hanging by a thread. And if we do not stand up now for the freedoms and the liberties that our Constitution protects, we will not have them very much longer.
So this is more about this is more than just about waving the flag. This is more about just, the left and right paradigm of, gee, Republican and Democrat. I try to introduce myself to people, and when I ask them, I say, well, if you tell me you're choosing the lesser of two evils, I'll ask my viewers, I'll say, viewers, was it your mother or was it their father who told them that choosing evil was a good thing?
Yeah, Yeah, it's not. And really, it's not about Democrat or Republican or liberal or conservative. It's really not. We're beyond that. The real battle today is either you're an American or you're a globalist.
Exactly. Yes, it's about being an American. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm the candidate, and Ron Paul was the candidate that really believed in America first. We're not world citizens. We're citizens of the United States in our respective states, and we need to understand that we are here fighting for the liberty and the independence of our country. Our politicians in Washington, for the most part, are treating us as if we're some kind of an international entity. And we just celebrated Independence Day, where we broke free from England and Europe. And now then, with the North American Union on the horizon and the NAFTA superhighway and all these things coming down the pike, we're on the verge of trading our country back into the very entity that we separated from 200 years ago.
That is so crystal clear. You folks should really consider this. You should do some research on yourself. You're right. When you find out the money and the power behind these moves now, it's the same money and power. It's the same royal families. It's the same globalist bankers who are trying to sell out your children's freedom and your children's future. Okay? Yes, when I say we the people that came here today, at least some awake Americans who turn around and try to, awaken the populace. You viewers out there, whether it's on the web or whether it's in the wonderful community of Sharon, it's time for us to wake up and actually find great, what I want to call statesmen, not politicians, who understand that it's a government by the people, for the people. Not like down the street we've got the Federal Reserve that was created by the bankers, for the bankers. Tell us how we can help you at least defend and support the Constitution and the Constitution Party.
Thank you very much. Go to my website, baldwin08.com, and you read what we're all about. If you want to help us, there's a place there you can help, either through contributions or for voluntary support. Our campaign is growing exponentially. We believe there's a lot of people throughout the country that are totally fed up with the two major parties and the candidates they put up this year. They know something's wrong. They know if we don't get back to constitutional government, that it's going to be over for their kids and their grandkids. And so we're just trying to send that message. And anybody that believes in liberty and freedom and independence and constitutional government, we need your help. So anything they can do, baldwin08.com. There's a toll-free number they can call, 888-USA-1911. Baldwin08.com.
And the phone number?
888-USA-1911.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Charles, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Glad to do it.
It's good to see you.